Welcome to Reconciling SaaS, the interview series where I talk to accountants with innovative business models and growth strategies who are showing what success looks like in the industry. I'm Guy Pearson. I'm a recovering accountant. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ignition. And today we're joined by Chase, Birky and Justin Kern from Darkhorse CPA. Welcome, gents.
Thanks, Guy. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Can you both introduce yourself and Chase, maybe we start with yourself. You want to kick us off with a bit about you and what is Darkhorse CPA?
Yeah, so I am a recovering Big Four accountant, I guess, to draw a parallel to your recovering CPA comment. I went to Point Loma Nazarene, which apparently Point Loma is the only suburb in San Diego that you know, but I went to college there, oddly enough, and went into accounting kind of by default in the Great Recession. It was kind of one of the only areas or fields that was hiring at the time. And so started an audit Big Four, kind of saw the positives and negatives of that, then moved into a small boutique partnership, saw the positives and negatives there, and then started my own firm, which eventually became Darkhorse, and the positives and negatives there. All of that kind of informed what Darkhorse is now. And along the way, I met Justin Kern. He actually was in a forum, a YPO forum with my wife. And so they were friends first. Then Justin became a client, then a friend, and now, really part of the essential leadership team at Darkhorse.
Well, Justin, without further ado, do you want to tell your side of the story?
I'll jump in. It's completely different than how Chase describes it. No, it's I actually am not an accountant, and I think that creates a little bit of an interesting perspective, especially as we are building something unique in the accounting world. But I come from a sales and operations background, and like Chase mentioned, we did start out as friends and as a client. And at the time, I think I was one of the largest referral sources because I was working with a number of small businesses in San Diego, and they were headquartered in San Diego. And I would have a requirement of anybody I was working with, you had to use Darkhorse as their CPA firm, because I was tired of getting lackluster support, metrics, bookkeeping, tax work. And I trusted and knew that the team had everything I was looking for to refer my clients to. And Chase and I started to chat about the model that he was building a few years back. And one element that was really important was sales and sales operations. And so I came on board with the intent to guide principals at the firm to become that client-facing sort of sales and customer service-facing point of the firm. And it's evolved quite a bit from there. So now I run revenue operations for the firm, a lot of the front-end sales funnel process, as well as the management and customer experience once clients are signed with all the principals. My focal point is to get them to grow. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Cool. Well, do you want to take it up a level and maybe give the Darkhorse pitch, either of you? Like, what is Darkhorse and how did you come up with the name? I'm also curious.
The name Darkhorse itself came from the idea that we serve small businesses who are often the dark horse against their larger competitors. And so that's, kind of the brand story that we started with. It's since come to realize and represent CPAs who take a non-traditional path to creating their own book of business and their own practice. And so they're dark horses in a different way because, they're going through really an undefined path, blazing a trail, and I think have proved a lot of traditional partners wrong along the way. But really what we do as a firm is we're a platform. And that's an overused word and probably means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But essentially what we're doing is we're creating all of the resources, all of the infrastructure, the technology, the staffing, the marketing, the branding, the compliance, all the hats you have to wear when you start your own practice. We're taking as much of that off our CPAs' plates as possible so that they can focus on serving their clients, growing their practice, serving their people, and doing what they're best at and building that asset, that core asset for them, which is their book of business.
Might stay with you for a second, Chase. So, Darkhorse, you're a CPA. You said a recovering Big Four accountant. There was another business in the middle called Black Slate. What lessons did you learn there? You said there were some ups and some downs that sort of led you to start your own CPA firm that, as Justin pointed out, reliable, all the right information, building a great service model for the clients that he referred. But what was that lesson from Blackslate that led you to Darkhorse?
Yeah, I think it's easy to get into a business partnership without fully understanding the gravity of the relationship you're getting into. I think most folks are aware of the commitments they're getting into when they get married, but maybe too easily run into a business partnership with someone without that year, 2 years, 3 years of dating, prior to making it official. And so, like any relationship, you're going to have differences in the way that you view the world, the way you view business, and there's going to be some struggle too when it comes to egos, right? Because both folks are in an ownership position, and usually type A, usually a little bit of an alpha gene. All that to say, I think really what I've found on the negative side there is that that structure requires a very deep set of alignment with that partner, or maybe more than one partner that you share ownership with. And, unless you go through the exercise to really understand how aligned you truly are and how aligned your vision is going forward, it's easy to realize you're not nearly as aligned as you thought. So also, in that small firm environment, and this is something that we've, heard about a lot from the CPAs that we've interviewed. At this point, it's been hundreds, especially so for Justin, he's kind of our front line of defense there. But these small firms largely don't have a succession plan. A lot of times have some outdated processes, ways of doing things that are the main owner's preference, that aren't serving the folks well underneath, in order to develop their skill set, and then also to create a firm that's worth buying into and taking over. Also, there's a lot of toxic politics in those smaller firms. So in a lot of ways, there's positives because you get to touch a lot of different things. You develop deep relationships with the people you work with, but it's not that level of, okay, this is mine. I have some level of autonomy and discretion that isn't, needing approval from, a partner group.
I'm curious, like, do you love numbers and helping people? I'm presuming both of you at least have some of that somewhere in your DNA, given that you're in sales and ops. Justin and Chase, you decided to be, probably an auditor because you wanted to solve what the numbers meant. Is that sort of part of the vision for yourselves in terms of the why help these folks scale up?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say from my perspective, and I think Justin's perspective is really interesting too, not coming from an accounting background. But for me, I always felt like I was an outsider and out of place, in audit, even just as a CPA in general. I've got an element to my personality that is not the stereotypical accountant, which I think a lot of people have and maybe don't acknowledge or embrace. But helping people has always been, top of the list. And what makes maybe not always loving the subject matter worth it, because it has a really palpable result in people's lives, especially when you're working with small businesses and entrepreneurs, people versus massive corporations, which was, kind of what the deal was at Deloitte.
I've got this weird passion to build things, and I do have this inherent feeling that I want to be, as I'm going to say, the best at something. But I realized early on in my career, I can only be so good or so great at a single task or at an initiative. What would really drive me and what really makes me feel accomplished is how much I can bring up everyone else around me. That has a direct connection to what I'm doing. And I've always had this passion to help individuals grow themselves professionally, financially, from their family life and how they're oriented in their free time. And I just needed the right platform myself to accomplish that.
So let's talk about why it's successful, because as we talked about the top, and part of the intro is business models. I've seen folks attempt similar things where they kind of have an aggregated service model so that a principal in your language can do their best work, focus on helping their clients and not really have to worry about the back end, the back office, so to speak. So Why does your business model work, and how is it structured? I know you folks are open with it, so thought I'd ask the question.
The work's the work, right? Assuming we're both good at what we do, and pretend I'm a CPA in this situation. You're great at what you do. I'm great at what I do. The end result, the filing of the tax return or the tax planning, let's just assume for a moment that the outcome is the same and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Then what we really need to challenge ourselves with is how do we focus on everything else surrounding the work and improve the processes that we know are always replicated across 90% of engagements. It's the exact same step. Yet those best practices on how to move a client through the journey are not shared frequently. And if they are, they're at a very high level. What makes us successful is that we've unpacked every step in the client journey, every single step. We actually mapped it. We know every single thing that occurs. And we just take a slightly different approach. Instead of trying to figure out, okay, how do I now get from this client to this client to this client? It's rather, how do I remove the noise surrounding the work so that I can move clients through as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, and spend the time as a CPA doing what you're great at, which is client service. So what we're building is a platform to give back time. On top of that, it has to work more than just getting back time. There has to be financial incentives involved, right? You have to actually enjoy the work that you're doing, the type of clients that you're serving. So we have certain criteria in place to ensure that what you're doing, you've decided to work on. You've made the decision to serve that client in that capacity. You've priced the engagement correctly. You've scoped the engagement correctly. And you're able to handle that engagement and manage expectations the way that you would even if you were on your own. We as a firm like to create guardrails or baselines that people can launch from. But I'm not going to define every single step that you need to take, right? Because then you lose the autonomy of being able to control your practice the way that you would if you were on your own. There still has to be a little element of that you can infuse into how you operate. But what we do know is that there are best practices along the way that needs to be applied. There's no reason not to do this thing, whatever that thing is.
The Darkhorse golden rule.
Darkhorse golden rule. Give it to us.
Is that no action taken or decision made can be at the benefit of one of our stakeholders at the expense of another. Those stakeholders being you as the CPA, your peers, the firm as a whole, and your clients. So if you're doing something that is to the detriment of any one of those parties, at the benefit of you or someone else, we have an issue in terms of alignment, which means we got to talk about that specific issue and why you decided to go that route at someone else's expense, and also talk about how we can reframe our structure such that we eliminate that conflict going forward.
Mm-hmm. So take this into practice. Imagine you're part of a bigger firm and you're even a partner, and you lose 3 key senior managers in the middle of tax season. Okay, they just leave. Well, you're probably not the main partner at that firm. So your gut would say, well, I don't have any of the help to now fulfill these clients. So I would have to tell the clients, I'm sorry, I can't serve you. Well, that's not an option. You can't fire a client because we're not staffed appropriately. You got to figure out how to get the work done. So right there, you're out of alignment. You're sacrificing my life, my time, my stress because of a decision that was out of my control. And now you're telling me I can't course correct because I can't hire anybody right now. And we have way too much work and I can't serve it with this team, but I can't let any client go because I don't have that decision-making power. So now you're stuck in a very bad situation. And unfortunately, that exact situation is probably the most common in the industry right now. Staff is leaving. I'm completely overloaded and I have no ability to make a call. Yeah, of course I could hire somebody, but can you find someone who's going to help? I got to get all the work done and you're not letting me take a breather. And that creates conflict. And that's just one of a multitude of examples that creates animosity and frustration within the industry. I think a lot of CPAs are feeling that.
And so taking that example at Darkhorse CPA, would the resolution be that you can pull, request, or pay resources from another principal to help you out in that scenario? Or would you fire the clients? And sorry, clients, I'm just like, better them to go have a chance to be served better elsewhere, right?
It depends on the principal. It depends on the principal. So thankfully, we have not had a situation where an individual's practice has, collapsed in the middle of tax season. Thankfully, and I think a lot of people enjoy being here and working here because of the environment and the culture we've created. But in the event that was an extreme case would happen, we're either stepping up as a group to support because that's why they're here. We're here to be around like-minded individuals. We've all been there. So whether it's resources from another principal themselves on the corporate side, it's not It's not always, a parachute that you can pull, but we want to make sure that we're supporting people through difficult times for sure. But in the event that it's something where it's like, you know what, I lost a couple team members and maybe this is a good time to just say no to a few clients, that's okay too. And we empower the principals to make that decision. The reason why they would make one or the other is they're substantially economically impacted by the decisions that they make, positive and negative, right? So they're not going to do anything that they haven't already run through the numbers themselves, making sure that it's the right move for them.
Cool. So I've got a couple of clarify questions on the overarching business model. So you've got a fairly large team there now at Darkhorse. Am I right in thinking that the principal program is like an accelerator or a graduate program of sorts? And I'm using names that you may not all use internally, so apologies, but it's sort of, I'm a CPA, I can go to work for Darkhorse, and there's the path for me to own my own book of business. And so I'm, support staff or staff CPA, whatever the right term is. And then I sort of go through the program and I get up to running my own book of business. Is that sort of the model, sort of how it starts? So fully fledged employee and then sort of, I'm going to say partner, but maybe just profit center share model. Is that how it works? Can you, maybe whoever's more comfortable, run me through sort of what the typical process looks like?
Yeah. So most folks enter our accelerator program from another firm. So they're a manager, senior manager at a traditional accounting partnership, and they enter our program because they've got, the needed experience, the right soft skills, the right profile, that we feel comfortable that within 12 months, not only are they going to have a 6-figure book of business, but there's someone that we can trust, to uphold the brand, and be a great representation of who we are. So, kind of back to your question about, what's different about this, just about every small firm out there is 1,000 miles wide and 6 inches deep, whereas we're investing heavily in all areas of the business that, support our CPAs. So, we've got a sales funnel, right, which comes from the investment that we put online in our website, things like being on podcasts and all the traffic that we can drive to the site that we can qualify through our pricing and some other questions we ask before that inbound inquiry gets to them. And then the work that Justin does with them is phenomenal. I mean, getting folks, who are shy, maybe haven't actually truly sat in a sales position or business development, and watching them, maybe struggle at first and then start to find their sea legs, learn how to sell in a way that's authentic to them, that doesn't feel like selling, that feels like providing value and exchanging money for that. So all that to say, there's the accelerated program is a really unique, unparalleled opportunity. They're earning a 6-figure salary while they're building this practice. We've got over a 90% success rate of people that enter the program, graduating and becoming a principal. It's really formulaic almost, that if you follow the game plan, if you are coachable and you're smart, it's going to work out for you. So that's one way that folks become principals. Another way is by merging their practice in. And so we've done about 5 of these, I want to say. Does that sound right, Justin?
5.
5, yeah.
Yes.
And so, these folks really have found that they have a practice that's running their life a lot of the time, because they're wearing all the hats, right? They're maybe 2 inches deep amongst 1,000 miles, so they recognize that they need to take some stuff off their plate. They need to gain access to technology and resources and stuff that they just can't build internally, whether that's from a time standpoint, money, energy, what have you. The demands of running the business are preventing them from improving the business. So they'll merge their practice into Darkhorse. We go through a long vetting process, obviously, before that happens, because culture is probably the most important thing we have at Darkhorse. It's the least tangible, but it's huge because it's really what, provides value for everyone. It's what engages people, to contribute to the whole, to, up level their peers, in areas that they might have experience in, but their peer doesn't. That collaboration, that we're all on the same team element, that is really foundational to, us, allowing anyone to join the firm, having that mindset just ensures that it continues to build on itself and it becomes the norm and the expectation.
I'll play it forward a bit. If I'm a principal, so I've built my revenue to $500,000 a year. Am I paying a percentage of that to be a member of Darkhorse? And I get great salvation on that because I keep getting new leads. So I can keep growing my practice. The leads are good for me. And on the other side, I don't have to worry about all the things that kind of Justin takes care of sorry, Chase, you might have a hand in this, but you sort of said Justin's the tech expert, all the things that you're putting together to automate behind the scenes. Is that, you
yes.
find that, yeah. Okay.
So the economics on the model for the individual, to answer a couple of your questions. First, accelerator and principal program, they are graduate level programs. You had to be in this industry for 8+ years before you can enter in, because one thing we don't train on is the actual work itself, fundamentals of the work, right? So you have to know a few things before you're jumping on board. Once you're here, compensation structure for principals is in W-2 wages, but it is a mix between what you would consider a traditional profit split type of a compensation structure and a salaried compensation structure. The reason why it's a mix is because even though all wages are paid out W-2, the way that they're calculated is based off the profitability of their individual practice, which we run on a class-based P&L system within QuickBooks Online. And so revenues come in, you just mentioned $500,000. You've got certain expenses that you've chosen to put on your P&L, whether it's staffing or some baseline items that you would just expense like you would if you were a business owner. And Darkhorse takes a cut off of net, which is fundamentally different than I think any other practice out there. Most, like a franchise takes their percentage off the top, off of revenue. Licensing is a fixed fee. And we are different. We're different because we need to be in alignment with how you're operating. Our goal is for you to build an efficient practice. There's a number of expenses that never show up in your P&L, everything that we cover as a firm, right? Tech, legal, marketing, branding, cybersecurity, the infrastructure components required, that is what we're covering. And when we split on net, we're both in alignment on making sure that you as a principal are operating efficiently. And we benchmark an efficiently operating practice at a principal who's earning between 40 and 50% of their revenue as their individual take-home pay. That is how we are defining efficiency. So if you're running an efficient practice and you're doing $500,000 a year in revenue, you should be pulling in $250,000, which economically, if you were to compare that to a partner at some bigger regional firm, right, they're at a $1.6 million book and they feel like they're doing everything and they're earning $250,000 a year. So economically, we have to be better. And that's one of the major points, right? From an operational standpoint, we need to be progressive and more innovative, which we are. And from a cultural standpoint, we just got to surround ourselves with like-minded individuals that have the same drive, maybe a different goal, but the same drive. And that's the beauty. Every single principal has a completely different target, and that's completely fine. Like, you want to be at $500,000, somebody else wants to be at $1 million, somebody else wants to be at 10 million. Great. There's a place for all of the individuals, regardless of what the final number is. This is not just meant on how much are you going to grow this year. We do not put financial targets in place for the principal. They put their own financial targets. Where do you want to be? And you'd be surprised. People will tell you exactly where they want. Not everybody wants to figure out a way to make $1 million a year. It's like, I want to be happy, make $200,000 a year, spend time with my kids, and take every Friday off. Fantastic. You'll probably not grow as much as somebody else who's just, hungry and ready to go, but that's not what's important to you. So yes, our goal as a firm is to grow, but it's not at the expense of pushing someone beyond what they want personally.
Related to that, that's, just kind of a cool thing is that we do a trailing 12 P&L analysis for firms that are interviewing with us to merge in. And we can show them a lot of times that roughly it's apples to apples in terms of if they did exactly what they did in their trailing 12 in Darkhorse, it's roughly the same. Maybe they'll be a little ahead, maybe they'll be a little behind, but in terms of what we're lifting off their plate as a result, they instantly have a ceiling that's much higher than it was before. They've got resources and technology and all sorts of things that are going to allow them to make a lot more money, from a revenue standpoint, and then also from a net profit standpoint. So that's what's allowed us to kind of overcome this barrier of, okay, well, I'm paying X dollars, to Darkhorse as a result of being here, even though that's based on my profitability. We can show them that, they're going to be about the same when they join And we can also show them that other principals that join, what their growth path looks like, post merger, and it's just a win for everyone. We have revenue streams that they can participate in. We've got a private wealth division, and they can get 20% of the revenues from the wealth management for mutual clients, and so there's just a number of levers that folks can pull, that make it so that what they end up taking home ends up being far greater than, what it is on their own.
So, I mean, I've got to ask, like, what's next for Darkhorse? What does 2024 look like?
It's a good question. 2024 for us looks like more of a year of introspection, meaning we've grown very quickly over the past couple of years to get where we are. And as a result of doing so, certain processes break, right? You realize things you thought would scale just don't. Apps you thought would scale, not Ignition, don't. Ignition is very scalable, right? So, but all of that, there's a lot of upfront investment too, right? Because we're paying that salary to accelerators while they're building, assuming that they're going to, make it to principal, and then assuming they're going to, pay off their buy-in over time. So there's just been a lot of time, energy, and resources, in an acquisition standpoint to grow the way we have. But really what we need to do in 2024 is rebuild, foundationally some of the things that we're going to need to scale from where we are to where we want to be going forward. We need to focus in on our principals and be there for them to help transition them into some newer ways of operating. We're not immune to change fatigue, nor our principals. So really it looks like, okay, we got to focus on, profitability, that we now have the scale to achieve. And we need to focus on, the processes that are going to allow us to scale and that are going to allow us to consistently, provide the level of experience that we hold ourselves, to with our principals, whether they're accelerators emerging in or the folks that support those principals. There's an unending amount of things we can do, to support them. But we just want to get a little further down that curve and, get to a place where we feel comfortable that, we can start to bring in more firms, and be comfortable that they're going to have the same onboarding experience and the same meshing that everyone else has had, without what feels like a Herculean effort to make it happen. So it's really, again, rebuilding the foundation to scale the building higher.
I'll give you a plug into Ignition on this one. Whenever we bring on a new accelerator class, and generally speaking, we try to grab them in groups of 3 to 5 to 6, somewhere around there. Mainly because we have such a high inbound lead flow that it's very difficult to manage the number of inquiries if there's only 1 or 2 people involved. And every time we bring in a new class, we use it as a test case to change something. So this class, for example, was all billings, right? And on all proposals are happening through Ignition. We had already been using Ignition for a year and a half. It was where we did all of our proposals, but we weren't billing through it. Now that's just a standard. This is what we do. And there's a number of other things we put in place as well. Baseline minimum pricing, minimum scoping of engagements, what services we're going to provide. And we use these classes to see whether or not we're crazy. Like, is this even going to work? Are we full of ourselves? I mean, what's happening here? So when they're all successful and we just see how fast they grow, this accelerator class has grown faster than any class before at a level that is beyond expectation, well beyond expectation. And as we're seeing these successes, we need to pause for a moment. Like there were principals that we've had here for 2 years, and when they started, they didn't have all the systems that we have now, and they didn't have the scoping structure and the pricing structure. And if we're too focused on the new and the better and the growth, we lose sight of the people that got us here. And we all made the decision, there is a level set that needs to occur to make sure that we are all playing on an equal field, that we know everyone is operating at the best way they can, not just the top performers, not just the new people that came in that didn't know all the noise that we had to deal with from 2 years ago, that trusted the new process. Yes, it shows that it works, but we have to go back to the people that started this with us and say, guys, it's time to level up.
I might dovetail into one of the pre-read pieces that I got off Chase, which is what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? Because I feel like this almost like kind of reiterates the message of this change piece and the fact that you have to revisit things that people who are perhaps set in their process. So you said when you're tasked with something difficult, you excel. When tasked with something mundane, your work product is less than sufficient. So I feel like, ironically, this isn't meant to be a battle cry, perhaps against the earlier cohorts, but in terms of like, I feel like making the difficult changes usually is when things tend to go right. Without risk, there's no reward, so to speak. I mean, that's sort of my TLDR takeaway. I don't know if you want to talk more on it.
Yeah, and I think where my mind was at when I got that feedback was, number one, I didn't know how to feel about it, because it was a compliment on one side, and then on another side, kind of a backhanded, like, we need you to do better sort of,
Yep.
feedback. So it was a little bit of both, but ultimately what I came to realize, over a number of years and maybe more recently, is that if I'm not engaged with what I'm doing, it's going to show up, because I can't fake it. I think a lot of people are that way. It's like, if you're not really engaged in your work, if you don't find purpose or meaning or stimulation in it, it's just going to show, right? Because your attention's going to drift, and you're going to focus on other things and just get by with, the stuff you have to do that you don't like and that you don't see, any sort of rejuvenance from. So for me, that was informative, that, if I find myself doing shit work, it probably means I should be doing something else.
Justin, do you have any sort of general advice or any famous quotes you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little shocked that was Chase, because mine's it's on the same path, but I feel like this is why we're so much in alignment on everything. My favorite piece of professional advice was, if it's not challenging, it's not worth doing. If you're not challenged, it's not worth doing. And I think that goes into not just professional life, it's your personal life, right? It's in fitness. If you're not challenging yourself, it's just simply not worth doing.
I had a favorite quote. Not sure where the hell I read it the first time, but it was by Bruce Lee. It's like, to hell with circumstances, I create opportunities. And if you know anything about sort of his life, like, it's similar to sort of, I guess, me when I started my firm. It's like, I just got told no, or that'll never work, kind of all the damn time. And I think, to your point, it's like, it just sort of spurred me on to somewhat prove people wrong. And the other side is like, no, I think this is coming, and I think this is going to be a thing that'll hopefully change, either my client's world or the profession or whatever the challenge was. But I appreciate that. Sorry, you go.
Oh no, I know we're probably way over, and I know you
I was
probably
going
have
to try
some
and wrap
stuff.
this up so you all can go create more value and find another challenge. But there's some fun things before we wrap. And so this is a fill in the blanks exercise. Since it's two of you, obviously let's go one at a time. So maybe Chase, you go first, and Justin, and then you get the advantage of getting extra time to think about it. So the first one, and Chase, I'll direct it at you, is my favorite thing to do on vacation is
Nothing.
Drink.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So on the weekend, you'll find me where?
Watching football.
Watching football.
Playing with my kids.
Okay. Perfect. Now you need to pick one. Would you rather attend a concert or a sporting event?
A concert like that I really love is kind of like a sporting event where the team that you love always wins. So it's a lower risk sort of thing for me. My wife has told me that I have some room for maturity when it comes to my teams losing. So the risk is a lot higher that I'll act like a 3-year-old. So I'll go with concert.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with concert, but it has to be a specific concert. If it's between the Super Bowl and like a Led Zeppelin concert, that's probably never gonna happen again. 100% a Led Zeppelin concert.
That's fair.
Interesting. Okay. I appreciate you gents sharing. Now, to wrap things up, and I probably should have framed this up. You've ever seen Hot Wings? I'm going to take a guess that perhaps you have. This is time for you all to pitch yourself. Tell us about Darkhorse, how to find you all, and what you're looking for, and what you're most interested in things coming up. So, floor's yours, gentlemen.
We're only as good as our people. And we're always looking for extremely just hungry and talented CPAs that have always felt like they have just never been given a shot to truly excel with their career, with their own expertise. And if you've been that type of person that have said, just put me in, coach, I can show you, I can do it, just give me a shot, that's who we're looking for. And yes, there are certain requirements, right? And you have to be in the industry for a little bit. But if you feel stuck and you feel like there's got to be a better way to do things, and you're balancing between leaving accounting altogether or starting your own firm, we want you to give us a shot. Hear about what we do and how we do it differently. And I think you'd find that there is a better path forward in the accounting industry, and we have found it. We're not perfect, and we're far from perfect, but I truly believe, and I think if you asked every single one of our principals, they'd say the exact same thing, that we are better than anything else that is out there that's organized. I'm sure there's some individuals that do great things on their own by themselves, but just a team of like-minded, motivated individuals that want to change how this whole thing has been going for as long as it's been going. And I think if you've got that kind of mindset, there's got to be a better way to do things, and I'm hungry and I know I'm good at what I do and I just need the right channel to push that energy through, we want to be that channel. Give us a shot.
Perfect. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time out of your Monday, and really appreciate you joining, and I'll catch you all soon.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, guys.